Hey, I'm Dark North. In this video, I'll be talking about how to build and play the OG Ayaka freeze team with Mona, Venti, and Diona. I'll be going over the stat requirements and how to play this team and how it works. If you're curious as to what other alternatives there are to characters in this team, you can check out my short 5-minute video on how to build a Ayaka freeze team, where I go over a bunch of different characters and their pros and cons. So anyways, let's start with the builds. For Ayaka, you want 4-piece Blizzard, which when combined with Cryo Resonance gives 55% crit rate against frozen enemies. Plus I have 21 on top of that, so it's like 77 crit rate or something, which is enough. You'll only realistically miss crits against non-frozen enemies, which is why ideally people recommend you to get 45 crit rate to make a 100% crit rate Ayaka, and to also have decent crit against non-frozen enemies. But in my opinion, that isn't really something worth chasing, considering the resins spent could instead be used to get gear with more crit damage, attack, and ER, and you could just deal with a little bit of crit RNG. But that's just my opinion. After hitting 20-30 crit rate, you can go all in into crit damage, attack, and ER. My Ayaka is around 120-ish ER, which when combined with the Amenoma Blade passive and Venti passive refunding energy is enough to get her burst back fairly quickly in this particular team. Moving on to Mona, her sole job is to buff Ayaka as much as possible, so her own damage isn't really necessary, though you can build her properly if you want her to hit hard. For most people, a Thrilling Tales R5 on her, 200 plus ER, or as much as you can get to get her burst back consistently, and her burst at level 9 is all you really need for her to be used in this team. The artifact set doesn't really matter, you can just use whatever, but if you want her to act as a buffer, you can use 4-piece Tenacity to give more attack to Ayaka, as 4-piece Noblesse is already being used by Diona. 4-piece Emblem is also good on her to take advantage of her ER scaling. Next is Venti. His job is to shred resistance with 4-piece Viridescence, so just give him that set, even if you have the wrong main stats or you have to use 4-star artifacts. His second job is to refund cryo energy with his passive. You just want to level him to 90 if possible to increase his swirl damage, give him 4 Viridescent, and some ER so he gets his burst back consistently. Around 150 is more than enough, and that's really it. If you want to properly build him, you can check out the short build guide I made on him recently, the link is in the description. But honestly, he can get away with very little investment. Next is Diona. Diona needs 4-piece Noblesse as an attack buffer and triple HP on main stats or healing bonus on circlet. You need around 180 ER on her, so if you find it difficult to hit that with triple HP, you can switch the Sands to energy recharge. Her weapon of choice is either Favonius or Sacrificial Bow. Favonius gives neutral particles, which makes it more universal. Sacrificial here on Diona will give you more cryo particles, which is better for a cryo DPS. I would just recommend you to use whatever you have at higher refinement. And those were the builds. Now let's talk about how to play this team, the rotation. You start with Diona's skill and then burst to apply cryo to the enemy. Then you use Venti burst skill or skill burst to swirl cryo. And then you use Mona burst first and then her skill to extend freeze duration. And then you use Ayaka's skill and then burst. And then you can switch back to Mona to apply more hydro until Ayaka burst ends if necessary. And that is one rotation. Then you need to go back to Diona, use her skill to generate energy and proc either Favonius or Sacrificial, then switch to Ayaka so she can collect those particles and also use her own skill to generate particles at the same time. This is called funneling. You do this because characters gain more energy if they collect it on field rather than off field. You then repeat this process until you get Ayaka's burst back. How many times you need to do this will depend on Ayaka's energy recharge. And that is how you play this team. So how does this team work? Let's take a look. Diona helps apply cryo to the enemy, gives a shield, and heals with her burst circle. Venti swirls cryo to shred resistance, and then crowd controls the enemies, and when his burst ends, also refunds cryo energy, lowering Ayaka's ER requirements. Mona applies Hydro for freeze and provides the Omen debuff, which gives you a damage amp, whose duration also gets extended when it is frozen. And as you use Ayaka right after using Mona, she gives her the Thrilling Tales attack buff. And finally, you burst with Ayaka to hit all the frozen crowd controlled enemies with the Omen debuff on them to deal massive AoE damage. And that's how you play the standard OG Ayaka freeze team. If you have any questions or corrections, leave them down below in the comments. If you found this helpful, consider leaving a like and a sub to the channel for more videos like these. I am Dark North, thanks for watching, have a good one.